Welcome to the Inner Athlete Podcast, where we help young athletes, parents, and coaches build strong, resilient, and high-performing athletes for sport and life. I'm Trent, head strength conditioning coach and founder of Inner Athlete. Each episode, we break down the training, mindset, and habits that actually matter, from strength and speed development to injury prevention, confidence, and long-term athletic growth. Whether you're a parent trying to support your child or an athlete chasing their potential, you're in the right place. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to the Inner Athlete Podcast. I've got a first timer, Alex, who's actually one of which I was thinking you've been with us for quite a while now.
Yeah, it's been a while now, yeah.
Yeah, so Alex is, I guess you'd call him a new coach, but I would say he's been a part of Inner Athlete in various capacities, actually. He was a former intern, did his sports science degree placement hours with us and took a bit of a break, and we decided to actually bring him on board. So it's actually, it's great to actually have you here.
Yeah, it's really good to be back. Did about 4 months of placement with you guys. Learnt a lot across various capacities and various places, and then fortunate enough to come back on board as a coach and continue learning and progressing from that perspective. So it's been great so far. Yeah,
tell us actually a little bit more about yourself, because obviously not everyone knows who you are. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us also, I guess, with Swinburne, what your role is with Swinburne, and then we'll get into today's topics.
Yep, so I was actually originally heading into uni for a business degree, and then the whole COVID hit, and then I decided, well, I'm really heavy into the gym. Health and fitness is a passion of mine, so I thought, why not go all the way? And so I transitioned into the exercise and sports science degree at Swinburne University, and then I never looked back. I have a lot of backgrounds in various sports. Soccer, swimming were my primary ones growing up. Did tennis as well for a few years, life-saving, dabbled in a bit of kickboxing as of late, and now I'm been playing volleyball consistently now for about 6 or 7 years now. And now with Swinburne, now that I've graduated, I'm now a research assistant there, as well as been teaching in some capacity as well, which has been a very fortunate opportunity alongside the coaching with you guys.
Yeah, and then Alex has been helping us out with the facility to Bentley Greens with the senior women's and the junior girls program, with Melbourne Swimming Club. Quite a lot.
Yeah, it's been, like we said, it's been a real crazy, I think 8 months now that I've been with you guys, and been fortunate to be a part of the different capacities and different opportunities that we provide to the various clubs and within the facility itself. So it's been good to get that experience and that exposure, and just been happy to be a part of it. Yeah,
and you mentioned something probably important about today's, I guess, topic or topics as part of this kind of like mini series of podcast episodes. You played a lot of sports growing up, and how was that to you, playing a lot of sports, throughout your childhood and teenage years?
It was definitely good to be exposed to different sports, different skills. I think the biggest thing is I made a lot of friends across these different sports growing up, and apart from the whole physicality side, just gave me a different outlook and different exposure to different people, different personalities, different coaches as well, and how they interact with each other. So it was really good to be exposed to so many different skills. And I saw with each sport that I transitioned to, the skills that I developed from other sports were kind of crossed over, and you could see similarities in different movements, different executions, which each sport got easier to coordinate and understand because I had that prior skill throughout that early development. So
which basically segues into our actual topic. So we're going to set the scene for you. So the dosages and the poison. So what we're hearing and seeing in Australia and also overseas as well is too much of a good thing can actually be considered a bad thing. And the reason why we're talking more about this now is this early specialisation in a lot of youth sports. It's almost like it's this over-professionalism of kids and teens, wanting to become a specialist in the sport very early on. For us as strength and conditioning coaches and osteos, physios, sports docs, GPs and all that, we'll start to see some general trends, and a lot of parents are starting to speak up about this. Is, the junior years, they're really focused on the fundamental side of developing them, and I think that has been lost, and it's been lost for quite a few different reasons. Now, I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago, several months ago actually, talking about how big the youth sport market is. Now, globally, it is now roughly $64 billion. And that's a lot of money. I think it's US dollars as well. It is predicted to be worth $80 billion by the turn of the decade.
Wow.
Which is a huge jump, which is like a 20%. I don't even know the math on that one. Potentially a 20% jump. So it's a lot of money. And it's been really pumped into the youth sport side. Now, do I think that's necessarily a bad thing? No. How it's been utilized, and the kids are being, I guess, put on this pedestal as a product over time, and companies coming in and looking to get their little slice of the pie and market share. I think a lot of companies have good intentions, but I think it's going to be massively manipulated. We're hearing stories now of in the US, in terms of recruitment for colleges, a lot of recruitment there's a few recruitment agencies. They're actually saying that they'll put your kid, if you pay a fee, they'll put your kid in front of, college Division 1 coaches. Now, you can't actually promise that as well. So there's a bit of that pay for play type of deal, and kind of taking advantage of people in that situation. So I can't remember exactly what it is, but there's a big court case happening at the moment over in the US. That's number one. That's from a monetary side. Number two is their tolerance. So with kids, there's only so much that they can tolerate from a training load perspective, and also monotony of training as well. And I think, for you playing multiple sports, I know you've had, a history of injuries from time to time, but you've been relatively good and continually able to participate, and sport is still part of your life, even though you're in your mid-20s. So you're still active, which is what we want post-career for a lot of kids. Now, a lot of kids, they're not actually starting to see the opportunity to get there. And like we're here, I had a conversation with a parent the other day. It's like the kid is only 13 and is already wanting to retire from soccer. I'm like, what are we talking about here?
You haven't even started yet.
I know, your career's just not even started at that point. You're just in that development phase where people don't know you as of yet. And unfortunately, when you move countries and, you have to kind of like find your footing again. You can't play the same way as you previously did. That allowed you to get spotted for various programs.
If you're getting value from the Inner Athlete podcast, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more parents and young athletes find the right guidance and keeps this podcast growing. Back to the show.
The other part is we're going to talk about is why, obviously we know early specialisation, why is it becoming more risky moving forward? Now, there's a bigger issue with the mental health side, especially for those who suffer injuries. You can get caught in the hamster wheel of, getting injured, you return back to training, but your training load spikes, and then you back into this valley of despair when it comes to the training side. And then if you repeat that too many times, it will affect your confidence because you no longer feel competent in yourself. And we've discussed that with Coach Kat Green in terms of developing competency, and over time, that will help build your confidence. If you're doing something on a regular basis and getting success from that, that's great. The other part is what sports actually rewards long term. So if you look at professional sport, a lot of the times it actually rewards you for being in the sport longer term. It's kind of like that delayed gratification. A lot of kids want to get big PRs. They want to get medals, trophies, and awards. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But they can't. It's at the early ages. It can't be like resting on your laurels. So laurels basically means you become successful, but you become successful in your small world. So that big fish, small pond mentality. As soon as you go into a bigger pond, you're like, oh crap. Sometimes it's better to have a big pond, small fish mentality that you have to grow into the pond itself. Hence the analogy. And then we're going to talk about how injuries and burnout and then dropout
happen over time as well. So this is going to be a bit of a lengthy podcast, so we're really going to chunk this up for you guys to listen to as well. But the first topic we're actually going to talk about is the early specialization, because as I mentioned before, it's becoming more pressure, more from not just from the coaches, but from the parents, from academies, and also the private coaching. And I think parents want to see a ROI, a return on investment on their kids, and that what that actually is, who knows at the end of the day? Are they moving up academies or being selected for programs, or are we actually focusing on more the longer term developments? Like, are we clear what we're trying to do? And I feel like we've kind of lost that.
Yeah, 100%. It's interesting what you said before about how, ironically, the growing opportunity, especially in the youth space, to grow into the sports that they find passion in, ironically, it becomes a double-edged sword where the opportunities are starting younger, and then so they're more driven, but they haven't had time to develop the passion in what they want, because they haven't figured out any other avenue. They're starting younger, and then coaches, parents, they want the best for the child, but through that, it's been lost in a sense. Because they're starting younger and because they become so funneled on a specific goal, then they're not playing for the sake of playing. They're playing, and when there isn't that return on investment, then it's almost like a small identity crisis, because they start to shape themselves into the sport that they think that they'll find success in, but when that success isn't found, what happens then? Yeah,
and I think from a psychological side, it's like it can be really detrimental. And even from like the physiological side, when you play one sport, you specialize in one sport, one of the biggest things we tend to see is you develop these like motor patterns that are very specific to the sport. Now, what I mean by that is the way basketballs run up and down the court versus the way a soccer player would run on the field versus a track and field athlete. You want to run the most effective way as possible. That's going to leave you feeling fast, explosive, and efficient. Now, the only sport that really does that well is track and field, because that's the sport itself. A lot of the times is in basketball and even soccer, we kind of lose the foundational pieces of being able to run really well. And I think when we've overemphasized the skills, the specific skills in the sport, we tend to lose the main ability to express the running side, which is what they're doing the most of on the field, as best as possible. So for us, it's like, as strength and conditioning coaches, of making sure that the younger kids aren't over-expressing specific skills in a certain sport and under-expressing skills that are actually going to help them carry them through moving forward. A good example would be that is a lot of the soccer, tennis, netball, cricket, it's all small-sided, it's all shrunken down. So the ability to actually run 30 or 40 or 50 meters with good technique is not being expressed at all. It doesn't happen until they're playing, under 13s. And even under 13s, the pitch is actually modified until they go to under 15s. And under 15s is a full pitch. So we're not laying the foundational work for the future for these kids, especially as they move up the age category with soccer. Footy is another example as well, where Auskick's obviously shrunken down. And then they go half pitch, then they go full pitch by a certain age as well. So everything gets shrunken down in order for them to be able to cover the distance. But the problem is, though, they're not actually working on the thing that's going to allow them to cover the distance in the longer term, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Cool. The other point with that as well is the overemphasis on winning early. I think a lot of parents are wanting their kids to win or do really well, smash PBs. And a lot of times is, you have two goals. You have outcome-based and then you have a process-based. The outcome-based it's very hard to control, if not near impossible, because it's based upon a multitude of factors beyond your control. Hence why they're called outcome-based. If we're looking at process-based goals, they're the actions that will lead to the greater likelihood of achieving
the specific outcome
outcome that you want. So say, for example, it's we got, plenty of soccer kids coming in at the moment. They want to make NPL. Okay, cool. What do you think you need to do to achieve that? I don't know. Right. What's the feedback you got from your coaches? I don't know. Well, have you had the conversation with them first? Yeah, I'll do that. So, yeah, do that first. You need to understand what your coach is saying and potentially what your parents might be saying as well in order to achieve that. So, if you
develop that context.
Develop some context. Develop some purpose-driven process goals that's going to achieve your outcome of getting to NPL. So, when I say to the kids is, okay, what do you think is your speed? Change direction. Your touch of the ball. Contact. Strength. Can you handle the physicality? Okay. Yes, no, yes, no. Okay. Now we're a bit more clear on what we need to do. How are we going to address that? Okay. We need to get in the gym. We need to work on our running technique. We need to do some more contact work. You need to start filling in the gaps, but understanding where the gaps are first. And that's going to help with the early specialization to some degree, to be honest, because of, even though it's specific to the sport, those motor abilities are actually quite generalized in nature. So be able to change direction, sprint, decelerate, jumping, all that is very general in nature. We're not focusing on how to kick the ball, how to pass, doing rondos. We're not doing any of that. We're doing general physical motor skills that transfer to every single sport.
It's almost like the sport takes care of itself, where what we do in here is we develop that general physical preparation for them to be able to adapt to the stimulus of the sport-specific conditioning that they do in the sport that they play. So what they're exposed to, we as strength and conditioning coaches help them prepare and be able to handle that level of exposure.
The general athletic development.
Yeah.
That's missing. The second part is play. As you mentioned before, play is a real important thing because it creates discovery, new movement patterns, creativity, it's problem solving. Like putting kids in a position to, if you just create a robot or a blueprint and for whatever reason the other team can expose the blueprint that you've had, you're no longer adaptable to the game. And then with any game or any time you verse someone or a team, you have to be adaptable. And that's where play really comes into effect. And that's where the fun comes. When you're playing, you're having fun. And usually you're working harder than you normally would.
When things are unstructured,
you push yourself a little bit harder in general. And that creates skill exploration. Mm-hmm. So giving the kids the opportunity to explore different skills. So I say when parents come in for a consult or for yourself coming in for consult, we encourage kids to do different sports. If it's during the holidays, they might take up bouldering or something like that. Just do something different. Go have some fun. Go with your friends. Discover something different. It's like, oh yeah, it'll be good fun. All right, off you go.
Yeah.
Go do something different. Go for a bike ride. Go along the beach. If they go camping, go for a hike. Just go do something different. Explore some different skills. Just put your body onto some level of novel stimulus or exertion. And then you actually will come back to the sport itself with a bit more of a drive or a bit more of an itch because you've had a break from it, And it's like, what's the old saying? Distance creates more, you're more fond of something when you've created some level of separation from that. And you want to come back with a new drive and vigor to continue to compete.
Have you found that a bit of that is lost now that there's a lot more opportunity for developmental camps, off-season programs? Kids are sticking around their sport a lot longer, which leaves less room for that unstructured exploration.
Yeah, I believe so. I don't think camps are necessarily bad. I think camps are a really good opportunity to hone in and focus on a skill or skills for the sport. But then again, it's like anything else. You do need to make sure they're having a break afterwards to help with that retention and recovery side because it's very intense. Be able to do like a camp, whether it's a swim camp, basketball camp, or something like that. Go do something else. Go just do a general activity outside. Go to the pool. Go swim with your mates. Go on the inflatables, whatever it is. Just keep it separate from that side. The next part I want to segue into is what sport actually rewards. Now, sport rewards overall athleticism, not early specialisation. Now, I'm going to absolutely butcher this, but from the research that's starting to come out now, more and more kids that make academies and camps earlier on, there is no guaranteed success that they will be successful as a professional athlete. And that could be in the minors, minor league, like state level, like getting paid, or at the professional level. Like, there is no guarantee. And the reason why that's really important, there's only a few anomalies. Israel Folau is like, for those who don't know Israel Folau, he played for Melbourne Storm. He played for the Brisbane Broncos. He represented Queensland, the state of origin, Australia, and then also the Wallabies, right? So he was a phenomenal athlete. Like, he's once in a generation talent. Like, I think he debuted when he was like 16 or 17. Like, I think he was one of the youngest players ever in the NRL to debut. One of the youngest ever. And then, oh my God, I got completely blank. And there's a player for South Sydney. He didn't debut for South Sydney Rabbitohs. Cody Walker. I think it's Cody Walker. I can't remember. But there's a player. He didn't debut for South Sydney till he was 26 in the NRL. Two different people, different ages when they debuted. He obviously got success, and he's still playing NRL. So he's going to be able to play NRL for another season or two. And his career's still going on. Israel Folau obviously had a very long career, played with the Wallabies and all that jazz. So even he had a long career. But there are anomalies, right? But a majority of success will come later on down the track. When it comes to swimming, the average age for an Olympic medalist is 24 for females, 26 for males. So it's the mid-20s. Right? Everyone's expecting success at the early 20s or even late teens.
Yeah, I think even for volleyball, the average age is late 20s, like 27, 28. So it's a lot later. Yeah.
And then some other sports, like, I know soccer is very, very interesting. You know, you got girls that got picked up from the NPLW, you know, from this season, and like they're in the late 20s. And then you've got this young girl who's, I think she's playing with Sydney United. I think she got selected. She's like 16, one of the youngest players to ever play.
Wow,
which is phenomenal. But I'm saying it's such a broad range on when they actually become successful. So a lot of times is making sure that they actually can remain successful for the long term, like actually seeing it out. I think that's the other part. Well, that's number one. The other part is overall athleticism. So if you look at a lot of sports now, they actually reward strength, power, and speed, aerobic and anaerobic capacity, and agility and speed, SAQ, which is speed, agility, quickness. These motor skills or capabilities are actually really important because you have to express them to a certain amount in each sport. If you underexpress one, you will be exposed in that. So say, for example, we look at soccer. If you're really technical and quite quick, but say, for example, the ball's moving slow, you're on a tighter pitch, and it's raining, the ball ain't moving quickly, you're going to get smashed if you don't have the strength to hold yourself up.
Yeah.
Right? It's now becoming more valued now to have speed and the aerobic capacity because they want engines. They always want people to boom, 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 boom the whole time. It's less and less about having being the big stocky player. Like, that player isn't as rewarded these days, but you still have to be relatively strong in order to compete. Anything you want to add on that?
No, I think this comes back to what we were saying before about they're rewarding certain sports, rewards certain qualities, but when it comes to the development side, it's about developing a holistic athlete that can express multiple qualities given the environment, given the circumstances.
And I think when you develop those characteristics, like speed, power, strength, speed, aerobic and anaerobic capacity, you develop like a robust athlete. So a lot of the times is, like we said, the success will come later on down the track. A lot of times is they just need to be consistent, and what we need to do is create a robust athlete, and that will change, especially at the younger years and later on down the track, in terms of their qualities or what they need to develop, that will change, which is a normal process. So when they're younger, strength is obviously a limiting factor. So we want to create strength, body awareness, motor control, coordination, real big one. As they get a little bit of speed, and then as they get older and older, speed becomes a bit more of a factor. SAQ becomes a lot more of a factor as well. And then obviously with girls, we know they have almost like structural changes that occur because of going through puberty. Boys develop a lot more strength as they go through puberty as well, and girls as well. But we tend to see that we just kind of got to develop those motor skills, and you got to treat them more like sponges, and those sponges start to become a bit more hardened as they get older. So it becomes harder and harder to train them out of bad habits later on down the track, which I don't know, I've seen for the last 10 years. You work with some older athletes. I'm not putting anyone on blast here. I'm just saying as a general pattern, when you start training with older athletes, it's very hard to kind of start to break down a bit of those bad habits that have developed that may have caused, longer term issues throughout their career as well. So ankle issues, obviously a prototypical one. We tend to see why has that happened is because they've created compensatory strategy. Come on, Trent. In order to improve or to compensate for the injured site. So if it's the ankle, the potentially changes at the knee and the hip. Was it kinematics? I think the way that the structures actually start to move and interact with a stiffer ankle.
And I think that's a real prominent issue when you start to specialize early, is when you start to overexpose as those developmental years, when those structures are still adapting, still changing, still growing, and they're not hardened and not developed properly. That's when the injuries and the problems can then occur, which then develops those compensations, and then it's harder to fix them in those later years.
Correct, yeah. And then one of the sports we love getting kids to do is gymnastics, not competitive gymnastics as such, but more just learning how to move the body through space, body control and awareness. One of the girls here, Annie, she used to do gymnastics when she was growing up, and she's a great soccer player. She's like strength, power and speed is unbelievable. And then I've got a swimmer at the moment, Zoe, crushed it at States, 13 years old, and she's just got great strength and power through the water. So we just need to continue to nurture that, making sure they're not developing bad habits over time as well. Let's move on to what can happen when you develop bad habits and do the same thing all the time, which is overtraining and burnouts. So do you want to talk about, I guess, the gas model? And then we can kind of go from there, and basically how does that relate to one's ability or lack of ability to recover? Yeah, so gas is general adaptation syndrome. Is it syndrome?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So that refers to when you create a training stimulus. I'm taking you to school now. You're the one that's supposed to be at uni. You have a training stimulus, you have a slight increase in performance, and then between a 24-hour to 72-hour window, you have a dip in performance and a recovery phase, and then you have a super compensations phase. So your performance is actually a little bit higher than the previous time you got exposed to that. Yeah. So that's a normal thing. And then we want to build that over time. We don't want to have too little stimulus, and we don't want to have too much of a stimulus. Too little stimulus means we actually want to improve over time. And that what we would call just more maintenance than anything else. And sometimes that is okay, depending on where we are in our season. So we actually do need to train no matter what. Otherwise, we do maladapt if we do too little training and no training at all. And that's where we have deconditioning. That's a deconditioning effect. When we have too much training, which is we're in off-season mode at the moment, where the body, unfortunately, cannot adapt, and we have a reduction in performance. So we actually either, number one, we link up our sessions too close to each other, so our performance just reduces over time. And if we do that for too long, we have overtraining and potentially burnout with the athlete, and they do need to go through a longer recovery phase. Sometimes we want that, so we might put them through a 7 to 10 day big training block, and then we'll do a recovery phase or a super compensation or a taper or a peaking block
Yep.
with that, and then in the body, it's like a spring. You compress the spring. Eventually, you're going to have to let that spring go, and then the body will start to recover from that. That's a wrap for part 1 of this episode on the Inner Athlete podcast. We've covered some incredible insights today, but there's still so much more to come. Make sure to tune in to part 2 for the rest of the conversation. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and share it with your network to help us reach even more listeners like you. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you in part 2.